Coming up next. Stay tuned to learn more about the state of blockchain education at major universities all around the world. Reimagine 2020.
Hey everyone, I'm Tom Shaughnessy. I'm a co-founder of Delphi Digital. We're an institutional provider of research and consulting for the digital asset space, and I'm amped to be on Reimagine 2020.
Hello everybody, welcome to Reimagine 2020. I'm your host this afternoon with a very special guest, Tom Shaughnessy. Very fortunate to have him and take him away, throughout the day. It's the end of the week here. Appreciate all of you tuning in to Reimagine 2020. Crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, it's all a blur, and we're fortunate to have Delphi Digital here kind of break that down into what the market looks like, how the technology is playing out, into our future. The goal of this conversation really is to shed some light into the core meaning of what blockchain is today. You'll be surprised from what you hear. So let me go ahead and, without butchering this too much, Tom, we want you to do a quick little introduction of who you are, what you do, and a little bit about yourself for the audience here.
Yeah, sure, Adam. Thanks so much for having me. I'm a blast to be on here. So I'm one of the co-founders at Delphi Digital. So we provide institutional grade research and consulting on the digital assets market. So long story short is we provide the research that top tier funds and banks and firms are kind of accustomed to, like that Wall Street kind of feeling and level of research on crypto, blockchain, and all the assets in the space. We also work with a lot of token projects in the space, rebuilding or enhancing their token economics, staking models, mostly more things of a financial nature. And we have a blast doing it. We're on the ground with a lot of teams, and that's basically what we do all day long. We're a team of 7 now, and we're growing.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. I came across some of your team here in San Francisco probably about a year and a half ago. We've just kind of kept this relationship. I've always been in touch and very fortunate that your team was flexible to provide, some insight for our audience here. The overall arching goal of this conference over here at Reimagine 2020 is really to bring the reality of kind of what we do, what we've been doing, bring in some bright minds in the space that every day have seen the evolution from Bitcoin to Ethereum to all these other chains to the ICO craze and the bear markets, and here we are, right? It's every year it seems like it's completely changed. So appreciate you jumping on here, and let's go ahead and kick this off. So, Tom, for the audience here, what is blockchain to you? And not from a technical standpoint, but what does it mean in the sense of what are the possibilities? What kind of doors does it open up? And if you want to shed some light onto your take on what blockchain is.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's kind of funny. I don't really get the question that often because we're so deep in specific rabbit holes in the space. And to be honest, the question has multiple different answers depending on who your audience is, right? I mean, to me, it's just more about sovereignty, right? And sovereignty about being able to be your own bank and control your own wealth outside of a government or an organization deciding what the value or supply of that asset is. It's about sovereignty with data, being able to own your own data. So, get rid of Facebook, get rid of those things. I think that's further down the line and it might not actually happen, but it's a possibility. But the other thing that's big about sovereignty and blockchain in the space, and that I find super interesting, is the fact that anybody with an internet connection and a laptop can start their own blockchain, own crypto, own digital asset startup with minimal experience and just a desire to want to do it. And there's a zillion different ways that you could organize how that entity will make money for yourself without having to go to, Harvard or Stanford and then working at Google or Facebook. And a lot of people say, oh, that's ridiculous. It'll never happen. But the reality is we see a new project start up at least every week that's notable, that has funding, that's attracted liquidity if it's DeFi in nature. So it's really exciting to see that. And, you multiply that fact across the globe. if you have some subset of 8 billion people now wanting to start their own entities or get involved with crypto and blockchain, and they're able to do that on their own from their house or their office, you're going to see some really cool projects pop up. And we're already seeing that today.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for that insight. I think it's so hard to, talk about blockchain per se. I think everybody's actually gotten better in honing their thoughts because it touches everything, right? It touches currencies, it touches healthcare, it touches identity, it touches freedom, it touches a way of life, and even COVID's touched on it. So what's kind of the state, I kind of want to zone in a little bit on the state of the crypto market, right? We have Bitcoin launch, we had Ethereum come out, we went through the ICO craze, and things have kind of settled down a little bit. What's going on in the market? I think you put out some reports in the last few months, maybe. But yeah, what's your state of the crypto scene right now?
Yeah, so I mean, to keep it more educational, I'd probably bucket the conversation into two sides here, right? And it's not that one side's better than the other; it's just a difference of what they're doing. So you have your speculative store of value. You have Bitcoin, which is a money. People shouldn't think about this like a stock or equity or cash flows. This is a global money. It's about storing wealth outside of a government to basically, unseat yourself from where you are and store yourself into something that could preserve your wealth over the long term. So you have Bitcoin there as a store of value, and it's a big bucket. It's an important bucket. We all love what it does, right? On the other side of things, you have kind of an explosion on the programmable blockchain side. So things that make a trade-off where you could do a little bit more on it. You could code on it, you could build on it, but it's potentially not as secure as Bitcoin because there's less surface area to attack, right? Or there's more surface area to attack on the programmable side. But what you're seeing there is really interesting. I mean, you're seeing DeFi applications explode. I mean, you're seeing stablecoins attract, massive amounts of inflows like Tether and MakerDAO. I think it's over 10 billion in value of stablecoins now. You're seeing futures exchanges grow in a decentralized way. You're seeing future swap. You're seeing things like synthetics where you could trade synthetic assets without ever owning the underlying asset in a totally trustless way. And to make this clearer for your listeners, basically what you could do is you could go on your computer, open up your browser, access MetaMask or any mobile wallet you want. Think about it like a web bank account in a way. And you could interact with all of these different applications right in your browser without ever walking into a bank, without ever having to do any type of, call anybody up or do anything. And you could do it in 5 minutes. So if you want to play a game like Axie Infinity Online or Gods Unchained, if you want to go and exchange tokens on Uniswap, if you want to buy a synthetic asset on Synthetics, or you want to take a bet on Augur or something else, you could do all that right from your browser. So it's really exciting to see the entire financial stack being built out in what will appear to the consumer as basically a web extension.
What do you think the target market is? Because you've touched on so many DeFi products and tools and instruments. Is it meant for, like, I guess there's various degrees of crypto and kind of, how it plays into the consumer side and the retail side. Are these tools meant for like the developed world? Is it meant for an asset class? Are we trying to just get cryptocurrency into the unbanked, and some of these are frontier markets or, underdeveloped countries? Trying to understand kind of how this exploded in DeFi with very complicated, instruments for hedge funds and institutions and all that. I guess maybe it requires institutions to come in, and then that would allow the emergence of cryptocurrencies into, the frontier markets and all that. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's another great question. I mean, it's tough because, you have people in crypto saying this is the end all be all and it's going to replace everything in the space. And I'm definitely not of that opinion. I think that crypto will work with institutions. It'll work with traditional financial services companies. And it'll put some of them out of business, but not all of them. Wall Street's not going anywhere anytime soon, right? But to answer your question more specifically, I mean, DeFi in particular is meant for basically the world. So if you want to pay your employees in a stable asset instantly, if I want to send money, let's say I have an employee in China, like it's very hard to do that today, traditionally, right? And the good thing about crypto is that you can use it for the unbanked. So basically, a good example I like to give on the unbanked side is that when we rolled out wireless communications in the U.S., people laid fiber and cable all around the world. It cost billions of dollars. There was an asset bubble in the early 2000s. It exploded, but it was very expensive. When you got to Africa, it was later. So they skipped all that and they went right to wireless. They didn't have to lay cable all over the place, right? They just beam it, get cheap devices, it works. That's kind of like what's happening with the traditional financial system and DeFi. Today, all you have to do is get a phone in the hand of somebody and they automatically have the full financial bank in their pocket. That's what DeFi can do for the unbanked. Now, there's issues there, like, if the average, income a day is $1, you're not going to pay 50 cents in Ethereum's transaction fees, right? That's half your wealth for the day for some people. So there are issues. The space has to grow. But the good thing about DeFi is since it's accessible everywhere, it's for the unbanked, it's for institutions, it's for the world. It's not just for any one subset, which I find is really, really cool.
And I think there's also varying degrees of adoption. And we're talking kind of about the unbanked here and cryptocurrencies and the landscapes and the process that we're going through at the moment. Do you think that where are we at in terms of adoption there? Like, are we in the first inning? And then I'm assuming that the adoption rate will increase, but it has to come from the demand side, the people, right? This is it's a technology, so it's weird to certain areas. Where are we going to get a turning point there, or is it going to be generational where obviously it's just going to take time as younger people grow and these people that are born into technology are just more accepting of it? I guess my question is, we just talked about the unbanked and DeFi, and we have all these tools. I think the next step is the demand side. What are you seeing kind of in the market from your personal experience of these people wanting cryptocurrency?
Yeah, it's a multifaceted answer. I mean, on the generational side, people growing up today will never write a check, right? Like, why would they ever do that when they have their bank account on their phone, right? They're already used to it. Kids growing up are accustomed to Fortnite's V-Bucks, Venmo, and mobile banking. Why would they ever go traditional brick and mortar? Crypto and blockchain and digital assets is just the next step for that in a way that's easier and that they could interact with it much more easily. And, I talked to my own parents about this and they're like, oh, it's so confusing. Like, why would I ever use this stuff? But for somebody who's, 18, it's way harder for them to use the traditional way that my parents and your parents and our parents might think about, right? It's way easier for them to send value to their friends on an internet wallet and play with NFTs. So it's definitely generational.
Not to interrupt you, but the Cash App in 2020, I believe most of the revenue came from Bitcoin transactions. Did you read that as well?
Yeah, a lot of their sales did. It's a small fraction of their gross profit or net income. I forgot the number, but it's grown a lot from, I forgot the exact number. It's up a solid percent though.
Wow. Well, what does that tell you?
Yeah, it's demand from millennials and Gen X's to buy Bitcoin is big. They're not going on. You don't see any stats out of E-Trade or Fidelity anymore on this. Fidelity is well in the space, but more on the institutional side, which is great.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you had brought up like Venmo and not writing checks, and then this kind of came out, not too long ago of the transactions that are happening, and I think that's kind of the point.
No, that's big. It's the demand side is tough because you're seeing the people who want to get involved. But people have to understand it's still like really early innings for DeFi. Like, we're still finding bugs and still building out the user interfaces for a lot of this stuff. So it's early, but what you are seeing is a hyper engaged niche community of people taking this stuff up. And that's what you want to see. You saw that with Apple, Microsoft in the early days. You're seeing that with DeFi apps now. And that's big because that means that if they see value, most of the world probably will too.
There's so much going on here. Like, we could probably talk for hours because couple things. Yeah, we could probably go for days. We might not even get to our other questions here. But do you think the Bitcoin price, regardless of the price, but the increase in price will stunt or increase adoption, whatever that looks like? More acceptance. Is there a correlation there of Bitcoin rising and people jumping in, and not for speculative reasons, but as psychologically as an acceptance of, all right, what is this? Maybe I will start using it. Or do you think the price, they're like, oh, this is crazy, like I can't get in, or
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Bitcoin kind of works against itself in a way psychologically, because as the price goes higher, like let's say each Bitcoin's worth 100 grand, people are going to be like, oh wow, I can't buy one. I'm not going to get involved in that, right? But the good thing is two things: is that now that people understand this isn't to buy a coffee with, it's to store your wealth, then it's easier to mentally jump in regardless of the price. And the second thing is, we'll get to a point where we stop talking in Bitcoins when we start talking in sats, because the price is getting too high, and which is a good thing. It's, price is the ultimate PR and marketing event for any crypto. I'll die on that hill. But, if you can talk in sats, send me 100,000 sats, my paycheck is this or that, or a coffee costs this, then people could start to rationalize, a new unit of account that's way more lower barrier to entry for them.
And this kind of leads into some other thoughts that I have, like with kind of the market and the way that it's going. And it kind of just all ties back into adoption for me of like, what is adoption? Is it consumer adoption, enterprise adoption, government adoption? And right now, I've been talking on the enterprise side, more on the development of blockchain itself, which is, I feel like that's kind of adoption there, right? Maybe not fully integrated, but everybody's trying, putting their toe in the water to get a taste of it. What are you seeing from the institutional side as far as, I had a conversation the other day, and institutions from their perspective was, they're 100% keeping an eye on it. I don't know to what degree of that 100% is fully, allocating to crypto, but what's kind of the sentiment there? Or they think this is BS, it's a facade, or do you think Wall Street and kind of, those players are, obviously Fidelity has their own, digital asset arm. What are you seeing in that realm?
Yeah, it's a good question. I worked previously to Delphi. I was on an equity research team at Oppenheimer, which is a big bank in the city. So kind of had firsthand insight there. And we wrote a 100-page blockchain report at the time, which was in 2017, just a little bit earlier. So we did definitely get that out there. And I'm thrilled that we're still working with Oppenheimer, and they're, pushing the space forward on that side of things, which is great. But to answer your question, a year ago, 2 years ago, it was, managing directors, analysts, directors of research. They were saying, I'm interested in Bitcoin, but like, let's talk about enterprise blockchains and let's talk about, that stuff. Today, you're seeing their clients get involved in layer one token auctions, and they're asking real questions about, security on Bitcoin post transaction or post block subsidies. They got up to speed quick. So you're seeing a lot of that. A16Z raised a $500 million fund recently. Grayscale is over $3 billion in AUM. Paul Tudor Jones's macro letter is going to go to every single one of his LPs, and it's going to be on every Wall Street desk as fast as it was shared in crypto, which was insane. Everybody had it in 20 minutes. Once those people start to question, why aren't we, allocating or getting exposure to Bitcoin's price because he took the futures route, then you have a landslide where people start to get involved in mass. And people in crypto forget how much money Wall Street has. Once Wall Street moves in, they're going to move in big and they're going to get up to speed fast. And that's a big deal for the space. You stop from going to raise a few $1 million for a project to raising a lot more, which is good. And you also have that analysis. But institutions are definitely accelerating in their roadmap on getting involved in the space, in my opinion.
And would you say that the macro concerns right now of the stimulus, coming out and just fiat in general, right? As I get more ingrained, I come from the bank too. So I heard about Bitcoin back in 2013. I had sent a wire.
I'm jealous.
I should have known that. I should have known at that point. Somebody came in and sent a wire for $100,000 to buy some BTC. And I had asked them to make sure that it wasn't fraud and all that. But thinking back, to put a six figures, right, on such an early technology, I wish I can go back and talk to him now, what was that mindset, right? Like, it was going to change the world for people to start dumping money in, even at that point. And we're still figuring it out? Because it's 2020 now, it's 7 years later. And has it been a big jump? Bitcoin before then was out for 5 years, and we're working our way. But with the macro kind of economics going on all around the world, interest rates, and we don't need to get too much into that, or you may touch on it, but it seems like whales and institutions are disregarding that somewhat, right? And kind of maybe having a longer term vision of the blockchain, or the crypto vision, the blockchain vision. Would you agree? Or why are they jumping in? I guess are those two separate things, the macro and the crypto side?
No, it's definitely, you're totally right. It's definitely connected, right? I mean, everybody has to be aware of, you might be involved in a specific sector as a fund or an analyst, but you have to be aware of what's going on the global macro scale, or else you're screwed, right? So, I mean, you're seeing that compared to Bitcoin in real time. I mean, our latest halving report, we showed kind of BTC performance year to date. And I mean, if you go against the dollar, it's like 20%, but if you go against the Brazilian real, it's 75%, or the South African rand, it's 60%. So you're seeing other countries, Bitcoin perform better versus other countries that are weaker, globally. So that's actually helping a lot there. But to answer your question, I mean, there's a real need for funds to get involved, because it's very hard to get yield today outside of traditional growth equities. Funds are continuing to push the envelope on riskier and riskier assets, chasing a return for their LPs, their pension funds, to maintain the standard of living and what they're used to, when in reality, it might not be viable long term. So if you can allocate to something like Bitcoin as a small percent, and it'll drastically improve the performance of your fund, it's kind of like a no-brainer as those funds kind of search for yield.
And is it contradictory a little bit of the store value and then trying to take the yield?
Yeah, no, look, I'm with you there. I definitely call Bitcoin a speculative store of value. Yeah. Definitely not a store of value today. It's just too volatile. Eventually, it'll be a store of value, in my opinion, but we're not there yet.
Nice. And I also kind of read, kind of keeping on this topic, or you mentioned earlier about stable coins and, the different ways to get crypto into people's hands in a more safe, less volatile way, or no volatility at all. I kind of read that central banks wanted to recommend banning stable coins. I don't know did you read that, or?
I didn't, but it's not too surprising.
Yeah, and what effect would that have on the space?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, because they want to ban something that's if the U.S. wanted to ban stable coins, it's kind of weird, because all the stable coins today are basically pegged to the U.S. dollar anyway. Yeah. So it's kind of like a weird thought process. I think and our government's doing a great job getting up to speed and learning about the space. I don't think the U.S. will be put off as much about stable coins in the next couple of years. But I mean, look, if you're a senator or a congressman, you're not spending all day in crypto. It's understandable to see it as a threat. But I think as they learn more, and I'm always happy to help if anyone's listening, to help them get up to speed on the stuff.
Yeah, and I think for our audience here, we've been touching on a few topics, kind of the state of the market, really, of blockchain and Bitcoin, and then kind of the applications that extend out to parts of the world, that we would that you wouldn't think, or maybe that you would expect, and hopefully we're confirming. I'm sure everybody's reading, going down this rabbit hole of that we've all been down. But ideally, I think we can safely say that blockchain is here, crypto is somewhat here. And do you think we're getting enough support? Like you mentioned, the U.S. is kind of doing a good job in certain areas on regulation and compliance. They've kind of taken a step back. Or I'm sorry, it was crazy originally. The Wild Wild West, right? And then they cracked down on ICOs, which totally agree. Obviously, the goal is to protect the consumer. But do you think they've done a good job to kind of allow innovation and the kind of being open?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, I think that they're doing their best, and they're doing a really good job. There's a lot of different agencies. You have FinCEN, the SEC, local, you have federal government. There's a lot of different agencies that have to look into this. And I think that, FinCEN got involved very early, right? Very early on in Bitcoin's life, probably 6 or 7 years ago, I think. But they're doing the best they can, right? And they're getting up to speed, which I think is great. I guess devil's advocate would say that maybe it's not clear enough. Maybe regulations are still a little vague. And you are seeing that because you're seeing crypto projects move out of the US for other countries. You're seeing exchanges in the US having to geofence their customers. So it's hard. You're seeing developers wondering if they're liable for the code they put out, which is ridiculous, but it's a concern that people have. So I do think that there still needs to be more work done, but I'm confident that the government will eventually figure out clear regulations that also protect consumers.
No, great. You touch on some good points that, we're kind of in limbo a little bit. I think the technology just took off, right? And our minds are thinking really ahead. The technology is kind of keeping up, and we're trying to figure out how to use this stuff. So we're in an interesting spot right now. And I think, for everybody watching, we have, some middle of the pack people that are tuning in. We have maybe some students that are taking up computer science degrees and startups and founders. And then on the other spectrum, we probably have some experts kind of tuning in because of, the reputation that your team has, Delphi Digital, which kind of leads me into the technology aspects. We just touched on the market, some DeFi products, and, what cryptocurrency is tapping into for the everyday user, helping out in certain countries where hyperinflation is kicking in. And, it's going to be a currency that they can trust a little bit. So leading into the technology, I asked you originally, like, what you thought blockchain, what is blockchain to you? And now, what is blockchain's purpose from a technology standpoint? I think we just touched on one application of currencies. And there's so many applications that are going on right now. What's going on with blockchain and the technology? I know you guys do some research there, and you probably have some investments in certain blockchains. I kind of want to understand the landscape on the infrastructure and what you're seeing as far as blockchain, being built.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot going on, right? So on Bitcoin, you're seeing privacy solutions being built out. You're seeing layer 2, its Lightning Network being built out to enable fast transactions. On the programmable side of things, you're seeing a war between layer 1s, so different blockchains that are programmable competing for developer mindshare, adoption, and consumer interest, basically. And then on top of those layer 1s that are competing, you're seeing an explosion of vertical competition between different DeFi applications. Who's the best stablecoin? Who's the best decentralized exchange? Who's the best, decentralized liquidity pool? Like, take your pick. They're all competing there, which is great because it's interesting. You get to see who's the best. It's fun, but there's no shortage of innovation going on in the space. It's really hard to keep up with. But all I would say is that to the consumers or retail listening, and anybody listening who wants to get involved in the space, we will get to a point, and we're already getting there, where you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. You're just going to see a gorgeous UX. You're going to interact with it. You're never going to know what it is. And it's going to give you new features and things you didn't have in the past. And you're going to love it because we already do. And it's really exciting.
And I kind of want to touch on like the internet aspect of it, where it took some time, right? And there were some applications, email kicked it off, and what's this? And it was hunky, the hardware was kind of nuts, cumbersome, and now we're in the blockchain space. Do you think the internet, and I'm assuming it's probably going to be a shorter time because of technology and how quickly things move, but internet took some time, right, in the 90s, and then the .com was kind of blowing up on the advertise, the way the different business models to make money off of the internet, and now we're in blockchain, right? We're transferring a value. Do you think the rate of acceptance and kind of some business models coming out, revenue streams and the way people are going to use it is going to be shorter than when the internet came out? The internet took a X amount of time, and now that technology advances, do you think, blockchain will, we're in 2020 now. Obviously, blockchain's been around, the components of blockchain for decades. Blockchain got the buzzword with Bitcoin in 2008, and here we are in 2020. Where are we in the game? Like, are we still at the first inning? You think we're in the fourth inning? And do you think we're trending in the right direction? Are you happy with where we're at?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm really happy with where we're at. Blockchain and crypto, digital assets, DeFi, Web3, this is all built on top of the internet. So you're able to move, orders of magnitude faster than if you had to build out the original OSI stack first, right? And the good thing about this space is just to put it in perspective, Bitcoin's over 10 years old, Ethereum is a bunch of years old, but it's not like they were widely accepted and, zillions of developers built on them back then, right? Only in the last, 2, 3, 4 years, and most recently the past year, have you seen an explosion of developer activity building on the space because people get it, the tools are there, developers know where to go, they know where to build, they get funded. So just to see the progress that we've had in the past couple of years, if that's any notion of where we're going, it's insane. I mean, the amount of brain power in the space over the last couple of years is incredible. So I would definitely look at crypto, not on that, 10-year time span everybody talks to. I would think about it more as, this might have been created over 10 years ago and contextualized around Bitcoin, but we are seeing a massive amount of activity recently. And I'm really bullish on the space because of that.
No, totally. I haven't actually heard anybody state it. I thought what you just said is there's, Bitcoin 2008 and Ethereum 2014. But that's when it just got kicked off, right?
Exactly.
The spur in innovation right now, we're in 2020, kicked off, around 2016, in the last 3 or 4 years, and then just even in the last couple of years. And what's interesting, and maybe you can share on this, is that it's been pretty volatile, right? We went through the ICO boom and bust. We just went through crypto winter. It seemed like 2019 was the year of maybe enterprise adoption. There's a lot of POCs, but that didn't pan out. And now, things have picked up, and now we're in a pandemic. And even through all of this, it seems like we're chugging along.
Yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I don't think volatility is stopping anytime soon, but one of the best things I noticed this time around in this cycle was when Bitcoin hit, sub 4,000, which would be like a 60% drop from current levels. So I was listening a couple of weeks ago, which is recent. My friends from high school texted me and they're like, oh, it's a scam, it's a joke. But, the funny part was all the developers kept building, teams kept shipping, and that's what you want, right? So despite volatility, despite price action, none of the teams stopped. I mean, some ran out of money. That's normal business operations, but the space is always moving forward. That's why I'm bullish.
I've never talked about Bitcoin price even through this whole craziness, right? It's always been about what are you building? What how do you see the interest, right? We go to I go to meetups all the time. I host meetups. I was going to conferences during this bear market.
Oh yeah,
right. The conferences were blowing up, and we were hosting meetups and having all of these teams come in. And not once, even from friends and family, should I buy Bitcoin and all that? What's the price? And I say, I don't even know. I get paid in Bitcoin, right? And I get paid in Bitcoin, but I didn't really worry about the price too, at all, really. And it was more about who was building what and separating, again, kind of what we mentioned before, the technology and the Bitcoin aspect of the cryptocurrency is just one thing, but the technology is taking off, and a lot of these developers and individuals and teams, and even at the university level, right, tapping into shipping product and putting out code.
No, I'm with you. It's Adam, you hit it on the head. I mean, it's actually kind of exciting to not have to text my friends back who are non-crypto people, what the price is or where it's going or what I think. And now some of them are asking, cool questions like how do I use DeFi and stuff like that. And that's exciting.
Yeah, I think when it went sub 4,000, I was like, just double down, fire.
Oh yeah, I was tweeting, I was buying sub 5K like the whole week it happened. Not financial advice, obviously, but yeah. It was. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I'm glad you did too, man. It's good to find other people that were buying in the fire.
I was like, this is a fire sale right here. Just yep. Be ready, And again, it's long term too. But it's funny because I keep asking my sisters. They're 16 and 17 or 18, and they don't have an ID because I want to send them some Bitcoin. I'm like, get an ID. You're old enough. Back then, I was already driving. They don't even have their license. Kids now.
This is like the best thing I'll do for you. Yeah.
I told my parents, open up accounts. Go anywhere, Coinbase, anything, Binance, and I'll send it over. But to tie into this technology, I know we got a few minutes left. Sure. So much money has been dropped into this space. billions of dollars, right? How come we don't have an application yet on our phone outside of, maybe moving money, transferring coins around? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a good thing to think about is that a lot of the money raised in the space, and it's been billions of dollars, have been used so far and still to build out the infrastructure. So to build out those little pieces and building blocks so that developers can go and build applications for the user. And it's not too like hand wavy. Like you're seeing these applications built already. Like we mentioned a bunch on DeFi before, but you're seeing them and you're able to use them on your desktop, right? You're able to use them on your laptop, your computer, because they're mostly web-based. That's going to happen first. It's just easier, right? The mobile apps will come later. And I mean, there's certain, frictions there. Like, you got to get mobile developers then. You have to get apps approved by the Apple App Store. And does Apple understand decentralized finance and crypto? And are they going to even approve it? Maybe not. Well, Google, probably not. So it's hard to get that in the hands of people. But it'll happen over the next couple of years, and you'll definitely get those mobile apps. But I'm with you. I'm waiting for the killer mobile apps too, because the whole world is moving mobile.
And then I think you mentioned this earlier too, with kind of the some of these other developing countries when you're laying down that fiber, right, and laying down cable and all that, right? And that was pretty expensive infrastructure. So I guess you can kind of pair that together with where we're at now and laying down the infrastructure. Do you think the infrastructure has been laid down? There's going to be tweaks and all that, but we've had so much competition from all these layer one teams. And now you mentioned, some verticals on scaling and maybe some other applications, but are there just going to be more blockchains coming out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to answer your first question, the infrastructure is there for certain chains. You have the tooling, the wallets, the community to ask questions, and the primitives to build things on Ethereum. You're seeing things being built on Bitcoin, like smaller things, like more Lightning based. But you're seeing applications being built today, right? Now, when you get to other blockchains, other layer ones, it gets a little tricky because they're earlier in their life cycle, stuff's not as built out, but they make trade-offs. So maybe an application developer doesn't want to build on Ethereum because even though the stuff's there, there's trade-offs that they don't like. Like maybe they want more security, or maybe they want faster throughput, or maybe they got a grant from a different layer one team and Ethereum wouldn't fund them. So, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why you'd build on other chains, but yeah, the infrastructure is definitely there to build on Ethereum at least. And then on other chains, it's getting up to speed, I think, faster than people think. I mean, I just checked Polkadot's relay chain, their testnet, which is another blockchain, in my opinion. They bill as an interop, but I think they're a blockchain. And there's a lot of teams getting ready to build on there. Their governance is pretty active and their testnet's going. And there's other launches. There's Blockstack, there's Solana, there's Tezos, there's EOS. There's a lot of them. So we'll see some pretty interesting stuff come out of them soon too.
And do you think all of these will interact at some point?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they're all in competition, and I think 90% of them are going to die. You can't have, I view a world where you have a bunch of application-specific blockchains and a world where you have a few dominant general ones. There's just, look, we could all love to hold hands, but there's not enough mind share, developer share, liquidity, time, and community to have 1,000 layer one blockchains.
Yeah.
There's not enough security spent. Like it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, I think they're going to get into some serious battles over the next year. I think Polkadot and Ethereum are going to go at it, and a lot of the other ones. And it's going to be fun to see who's left. But these layer ones are running out of money. They need to start attracting developers.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's why Ethereum's taken off, right? They have the community, and even the mindset in blockchain and crypto is community driven. But it's kind of weird that it's also tribalism a little bit too on EOS and
always.
Yeah, like everybody chooses their chain. And I think that's kind of with all the bells and whistles. And right now Ethereum has kind of the global community, like building stuff for them and documentation. And then beyond that, right, of like YouTube videos and education stuff that's even outside of the crypto space that helps people kind of learn and adopt more. But for all the viewers out there, we kind of just touched on many aspects of blockchain and crypto, from the unbanked to interoperability to blockchains and the infrastructure, and even the question that, well, why don't we have an app now? And Tom and myself completely agree that we've just laid down the foundation, and these applications, these killer apps are going to be. It's just a matter of time. We don't know how long or what that time is, but we can agree, Tom, that we're headed. We're pretty satisfied where we're at with the competition, kind of bringing out the best, and we're going to get to the end goal at some point here.
I'm with you. Yeah, I totally agree. And competition's great, interest is great, and the space is moving forward. So I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Well, I think we're up on time here. We've chatted for quite a while. I want to thank you for joining us, and the Delphi Digital team for working with us to bring you on board here. For all of our audience out there, where can our audience find you, Tom?
Yeah, and Adam, thanks so much for having us on. I really appreciate kind of the thoughtful questions and the normal conversation. This has been a blast, and I love what you guys are doing with the conference. Definitely hope we can come back soon. It's just delphidigital.io. We're on Twitter as well on a similar name, and I'm on there as well under just Tom Shaughnessy.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the conference at Reimagine 2020. We're in tough times right now, but through this conversation, hopefully we shed some positivity of us moving forward, regardless of everything going on in the world, and hopefully everybody that's a developer, keep developing. If you're just jumping into this space, there's so much information out there that you can run with it. Just as blockchain is decentralized, providing freedom, there's so many opportunities that you can take, whether that's from a career standpoint, a side project. You might even be working at a Fortune 100 company that's tapping into this. So I think you're in a good place right now to take advantage of the opportunities. So with that, being said, we'll go ahead and conclude this. Tom, thank you for joining, and hopefully you have a nice weekend.
Adam, thanks so much.
Stay tuned to learn more about student interest in blockchain technology. Reimagine 2020.